Topping today's news, Prime Minister Philip Davis making absolute clear the government's stance on the Grand Bahama Port Authority. A man shot and killed off Johnson Road. Police begin investigations into the discovery of a deceased infant, and Opposition Chairman Sands taking the government to task over the lack of available ambulances in country. Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Jarino Saunders. This is your JCN Evening News. It's a pleasure to have you join us. Prime Minister Philip Davis on Monday night, while speaking at the Grand Bahama Chamber of Commerce, made absolute clear the government's position when it comes to revitalizing Freeport and, by extension, Grand Bahama. He was firm on what is expected of the Grand Bahama Port Authority and what will no longer be accepted. The government says the Grand Bahama Port Authority owes some $357 million for infrastructural works and salaries in Freeport, but the Port Authority says it owes the government nothing. Prime Minister Davis has been he has been a global leader fighting for small island developing states, and says he must also now fight for Bahamians here at home.
Now, pardon me for walking you through details here. I just want to establish that the Port Authority had more than ample notice, and yet they still felt no compulsion to persuade us they intended to be true partners for progress. Let's look at the facts. Look at the breaches in the seawalls along the Grand Lucayan waterways. Look at the unusable public ramps fishermen need to lower their boats into the water. Look at the erosion of the public beaches. Look at the area some call the ghetto, just yards away from the Pink Building. Look at the bridge leading to East Grand Bahama, still not fully repaired. Downtown Freeport was dead for 20 years, with empty lots and shuttered and derelict buildings. It is our administration that's going to bring downtown back.
The Prime Minister was critical of the Grand Bahama Port Authority for its minimal efforts when Freeport was at its lowest. This is following Hurricane Dorian. However, with that said, Prime Minister Davis wanted to make it clear that the Grand Bahama Port Authority itself is not a problem. Director of the Grand Bahama Port Authority, Rupert Hayward, was also in attendance when the Prime Minister said this about those who have and who currently run the Grand Bahama Port Authority.
Now, this is not to say that the entity Port Authority can't be good partners. We want them to be good partners, but I just need to highlight what is facts. There's just too much evidence that they care more about their infighting and shareholder lawsuits than our people. This is what happens when cities are treated like family heirlooms passed down without a thought as to whether those inheriting are willing to serve the interests of our communities over their profits. They have divested themselves of key assets, sold for profits, the very assets that would allow them to develop the economy of Freeport, as they are required to do by law. The road building company has been sold, the harbor company has been sold, the utility company, the power company, even the sanitation company. They were happy to offload the airport to my predecessor, who somehow consented for the Bahamian taxpayer to take on the liability of rebuilding the airport, whilst the insurance money for the damage caused by Dorian went somewhere.
The Prime Minister noted that despite selling off major assets, the Grand Bahama Port Authority did not reinvest into the city of Freeport, particularly investments into climate-resilient infrastructure in the face of intensifying hurricanes. He says the Grand Bahama Port Authority has not kept its obligation to the people of Freeport and the Bahamas in general.
They haven't kept the obligations to you, and they haven't kept them to the Bahamian taxpayers more broadly either. As I alluded to earlier, when the government pays the salaries of the many people delivering public services within Freeport, the port is responsible for reimbursing the government for any amount spent beyond the customs taxes paid in the port. In my meetings With them, I was clear. Whatever has transpired in the past, my government is not prepared to subsidize your private profits with public money. The Port Authority's position is that this provision has never been enforced. Our position is that this unfortunate fact in no way removes the obligation under the law.
The dispute between the government and the Grand Bahama Port Authority regarding the $357 million the government says it is owed now headed for arbitration. Just after 8 a.m. today, police were called to the scene of what is believed to be the country's 47th murder, which took place on Dunkirk Road in the Johnson Road area. Police Press Liaison Officer Chief Superintendent Chrislyn Skippings shared what the police know thus far.
Sometime around 8:30 this morning, our department was notified that a male was found unresponsive on a dilapidated property here on Dunkirk Road. Officers responded and discovered a male with multiple gunshot injuries to the body. Our initial reports thus far indicate that sometime around 1 o'clock this morning, gunshots were heard in the immediate area. And so we are actively investigating this matter.
This latest homicide comes on the heels of the shooting death of a 30-year-old male on Fleming Street early Monday morning. Also from the police today, they are reporting a shocking and disturbing discovery of an infant found deceased in the garbage bin of a bathroom at a Rubis gas station on Gladstone Road. Officers from the Central Detective Unit are conducting their initial investigations. No other details are available at this time. However, the police are hopeful that security and surveillance videos in the area can help them identify the person responsible for leaving the infant in the restroom. Free National Movement Chairman Dr. Dwayne Sands took to social media on Monday to criticize the government for what he calls their failure in the healthcare system. In particular, Dr. Sands says it is unacceptable that there are only 4 working ambulances on New Providence.
Because of the spectacular incompetence and mismanagement by this New Day Minister of Health, Michael Darville, most of the ambulances just ain't working. Now, we live on an island of almost 300,000 people. And so if you got 4 ambulances working, that makes 1 public ambulance for 75,000 people on New Providence. Because all the rest park up in Sandlin's yard needing to get fixed. So God help you if you have an emergency and you need an ambulance right away. This is truly a matter of life and death. Suppose a child needs an ambulance right away. Suppose somebody had a stroke or a heart attack. What if they were in a bad accident? Suppose there's a major event or natural disaster. All these murders and stabbings are putting extra pressure on emergency and ambulance services. And people will die if they cannot get to the hospital as quickly as possible.
Sands chided the office of the Prime Minister for purchasing a new vehicle for the Prime Minister instead of purchasing new ambulances.
And so the Minister of Health and Wellness is making all kind of lame excuse for their incompetence and mismanagement. You would think that Brave and them could have ordered some ambulances as a matter of priority when he was ordering his $200,000 BMW. And everywhere you look, you see these PLP ministers with brand new SUVs and cars, all riding in luxury and comfort, because that is their priority. Buying new ambulances is way down on their list because, quite frankly, they don't care about struggling people.
The Free National Movement chairman claims the healthcare system is collapsing under the PLP. Meanwhile, last week, the Minister of Health and Wellness, Dr. Michael Darville, said the government is aware of the need for new ambulances. He explained that the government has completed the IDB procurement process for 14 new ambulances, which he says were very difficult to secure following the COVID-19 pandemic, as countries around the world were seemingly hoarding ambulances. And finally, in this segment, for many years, there have been concerns about safety and misconduct in the jet ski industry. Well, in March of this year, the government passed the new jet ski and motorboat control and registration amendment bills. They aim to bring better accountability and responsibility to the industry. Now, several months later, the minister responsible, JoBeth Kobe Davis, gave an update on the coming amendments for the jet ski operators.
Actually, I am waiting on the Port Authority Board
to complete their report and send it to me. They did have a number of meetings with our hotel association. A lot of the hotels have asked us to review some of the areas that the jet skis are operating from, and so they have went and did a walkabout of some of those locations, and I'm now waiting for them to advise me in a report what their recommendations are, so that we can then have the meeting with Office of the Attorney General on what sort of amendments we'd like to see and how we can support the sector, not just I don't want everything to seem as if it's just to punish or reprimand. It is a sector that people do enjoy, and you do have a good group of people that work diligently, and this is how they care for their families. And so any change is really to help bring improvements to the sector.
According to the government, they are trying to strike a balance between visitor safety and allowing jet ski and watercraft operators to earn a living. We'll take a break here. We'll be right back after these commercials.